We hear a lot of big assertions about private prisons and the benefits that they have over publicly run prisons, that they will save money, be instituted in a way that is more efficient, better outcomes for the prisoners as well. But is it actually working out that way as they become more and more common across the country? Joining us now to break it down is Noah Smith, Bloomberg opinion columnist. Noah, welcome to the Damage Report.
Hey, thank you.
Very glad to have you here. I enjoyed your piece recently in Bloomberg about this. And so I wanted to talk to you about private prisons. And it's an example of what you term sort of pseudo privatization. Can you give an example of how that actually works?
Basically, pseudo privatization is when you have private people making the money and administering the thing, but government actually just foots the bill. It hands it off to some, private contractor and says, here's a bunch of money, do what you want with it. An example is like mercenaries. No bid contracting, no bid government contracting is another example, and of course private prisons. So basically, you have the benefits. You have none of the benefits of privatization, even theoretically, like from competition. Instead, you just have all the downsides, which is lack of accountability.
And so I alluded to some of what are given as examples of why we should have more of these, that they will save money and stuff like that. You've looked at the actual evidence. How does it actually shake out? Do they actually make good on any of the promises made to justify them?
Well, no. So there have been a lot of studies about whether they save money, and none of the studies really finds that they save money. On a per person per day basis, they cost the same as other prisons. But ironically, because there's this sort of stereotype that they cost less, judges, when there's more private prisons, judges end up sentencing people to longer prison sentences, which actually increase total costs, and of course is bad for the people who get locked up for longer in prison.
Yeah, I found that to be really fascinating because that's not what I would have expected. What about other hidden differences between the two, things that crop up just sort of naturally from there being private prisons? What else came up in your research?
Well, there's a lack of accountability, and so you see a large amount of abuses. And then in terms of actually improving outcomes, private prisons don't have any difference in recidivism, so people are just as likely to turn to a life of crime after they get out as from other prisons. So there's no real improvement there. So you're not saving on cost, and ironically, you're probably losing on cost because judges are handing out these larger sentences. And at the same time, you're having more abuses because there's just less accountability and oversight. So it's pretty much a net loss for the public to have these private prisons.
And so you talk about in the article that there are mainly, I believe it was 3 corporations that run the vast majority of these private prisons, correct?
That's right. And so, the benefit of privatization is supposed to be that you have competition, but in practice, we really don't. We have these 3 companies dominating the entire market, and that basically removes any real benefit that privatization could give.
And obviously, because they're big corporations and there's a lot of money to be made, they do quite a bit of lobbying. And in particular, in some states rather than others. It's not necessarily equally distributed across the country. I know that recently there's been some effort from some politicians to sort of push back against the spread of these private prisons. Based on your research and the money that's sort of flowing back and forth, does it seem like that's likely to be successful?
Well, actually, the Obama administration was going to completely phase out private federal prisons. And then Trump administration came in and Jeff Sessions reversed that. So one of the problems with this pseudo privatization is that now you have this sort of industry that has a captive, almost monopoly, and that becomes a lobby, and that becomes sort of a stable lobby that says, okay, well now if you get rid of these private prisons, all these private prison guards will lose their jobs, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they could get jobs at state prisons or whatever, but that's what they'll say. And they'll become friends with the politicians, and it just becomes really entrenched. And so the pseudo privatization just becomes a self-perpetuating thing that I think is just bad for everybody.
Yeah, and it's similar to what we see in other industries, although as you point out, the fact that we were apparently close to having a big change, a big reform in this area, and then having that snatched away is even worse in comparison to some other examples. Well, Noah Smith, thank you for joining us on the show. Everyone should go and they should read your article available at Bloomberg. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.